Hello and thanks for checking out TheChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey crypto friends, checking in on the usual names: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, XRP, Binance, and ADA. We had some nice bullish continuation. We're also going to look at some of the alerts from the alert system. And we're going to focus in on abnormal volume and how abnormal volume can give us indications of tops and bottoms being set and why volume spikes happen at those points. So looking at Bitcoin, the last time we checked in, we said as long as the 4-hour uptrend is intact, the bulls are in full control. And we're heading up towards that resistance. I believe at that point we had this higher low established, and we were patiently waiting for continuation. We got it. Another little bull flag. So we've pretty much just been firing off 4-hour bull flags. Remember the exponential resistance? It turned into support that changed everything as far as the short-term direction, and we now have a clear 4-hour uptrend maintaining. So we have our last higher low. Let's see, we had one at 53.63. We've got one up here. This is the most important short-term one for me, 56.21. And you can see we're chopping around a little bit here. It seems that the bulls have gotten a little exhausted. We had another 4-hour bull flag that did break, but no follow-through behind it. So now we're trading with multiple 4-hour inside bars, and this tiring out of the bulls could indicate that a bit more further consolidation is needed. If we were to lose the 4-hour uptrend, we zoom out to the daily chart, and we can see that anything above 50.72 on the daily chart keeps the bulls in full control. So we're just marching closer and closer to our key previous resistance zone, this long drawn out multiple month equilibrium that finally broke bearish, but there's a lot of price history here in the low $6,000 range. So that's what a lot of people are watching, and that's what we are watching as well. So 4-hour uptrend, if we lose it, we look for a daily higher low to have to form. We're seeing a bit more weakness in some of these altcoins comparative to Bitcoin as far as today's candlestick goes. But let's now look at an example of the abnormal volume on the alerts.chartguys.com free week trial system, because it's showing us the abnormal volume shows us a pivot point. So why does it show a pivot point is approaching? Because you have a scenario where it's the bulls giving the last push, everything that they have, and it's being met with the bears finally saying, okay, we're done. So you've got profit taking from the bulls, the last of their buying power, the bulls start selling, and the bears start jumping in saying, okay, it's time for consolidation. We're going to short up here. And that influx of volume triggers the abnormal volume alert, which is based on an average volume over a certain amount of periods. And when it spikes a certain percentage over that average volume, that's when it goes off. We can see a couple times it happened here on the way up. It was the battle going on where we had a bull move on high volume looking for continuation and the bears knocking the price right back down. And that happened twice, where there's this influx because the bulls push and then it's met by the bears knocking the price down and defending. And then we have the instance where we got the clear bull break. The volume or the abnormal volume was not triggered here because we didn't have the bears doing anything to defend. They pretty much rolled over and the bulls ran them over. And then we got to the top, and that's when we started to see the consolidation. So looking in at Litecoin, where we stand, Litecoin on the daily time frame, again, a much different candlestick than Bitcoin. The shape's the same, but right now Bitcoin is still above where we opened, whereas Litecoin is below where we opened and is at the low of the day. So we don't have a daily high or low yet, as I consider this a move straight from the low to the top of this move. And you might say, well, what about the higher low in here? And I don't consider that a higher low because it was an inside bar that broke bullish. It's still a higher low every single candlestick here, so I don't see a clear point where the bears knocked the bulls down, pushed the bulls back, and then the bulls said, okay, we're done, and saw continuation. It was more of just sideways trading, so I do not consider inside bars higher lows, and if we do see a bear break of today's candlestick tomorrow, we're going to look for the daily higher low to have to form compared to 64.86. The weekly time frame certainly giving us convincing action that our weekly higher low has been established, and that will be confirmed if we can get a daily higher low and higher high to confirm we are now in an uptrend. The daily chart is in a downtrend, and we broke some resistance levels, but I still need the higher low and higher high to confirm the daily chart is now in an uptrend. And again, that would be very convincing that the weekly higher low is established, and the bulls are going to try and make their way back up to 100. Looking at the 4-hour time frame, we already lost this little higher low, and that's why Litecoin is weaker than Bitcoin, breaking that support level. We're now testing the exponential moving averages, and if we see those levels break, we're looking down in the low 70s, the 71s, for the next range of support. Some members have been noticing how Litecoin is potentially giving some quick little early clues for the tech or the biotech, stuck on stocks, for the crypto space as a whole, as far as what Bitcoin and Ethereum and those other coins are doing. So it's worth keeping an eye on and watching, and then going back and back testing and saying, okay, how soon was that bull signal given, and how far after that was it given on the other names? And now perhaps the fact that we're down at the low of the day means Bitcoin is more likely to lose its 4-hour uptrend and follow Bitcoin. We'll see how this 4-hour inside bar breaks in the near-term future. So looking at the Litecoin abnormal volume indicator. So on the 15-minute time frame here, the abnormal volume, you can see it signaling points. We had it signal a breakout getting going here, but since that breakout, it signaled a low of consolidation, it signaled a top of the move here, and then it signaled the low again. So these signals get sent off for the abnormal volume. Again, it's the bears pushing the price down and the bulls saying, nope, we're done being pushed down. That's as far as we're going. Multiple hours of bull move from that. An hour plus of bear move from this signal. An hour plus of bounce attempt from this signal. So it shows pivot points. We want to be looking in the opposite direction of after an extended move. So this move wasn't extended when that volume kicked in. It was just getting going. But you can see after a move that's been playing out for multiple hours, with each candlestick being 15 minutes, once the abnormal goes off, after that, that's when we look in the other direction. It's the last push, the last gasp in that direction that means start looking in the other direction. Ethereum on the daily chart is a daily inside bar. It too is near the low of the day. And here we do have a little clear higher low because it wasn't a daily inside bar that formed. So I've got supports on Ethereum at 146, 148.81, and 155.91. The bulls ideally want to hold that level because if we lose it, we're going to be looking at we're not seeing a weekly higher low established yet. We have to change this daily trend more convincingly, in my opinion. You might say, well, there's a daily trend change right there, but that's also the kind of a little higher low and higher high pattern where when you zoom out on the weekly time frame, it hasn't done anything to shift that momentum yet. Yes, we have a weekly inside bar forming, but I have to see that weekly inside bar break bullish to call this the weekly higher low. And if it breaks bearish, then clearly we have not established that weekly higher low yet. So the most important resistances, you can see these clear peaks. Anything under 77, 177.84 is just going to be a lower high. And again, this is one of those charts where you can condense it and get a different viewpoint. And looking at the 2-day chart, we would still be very clearly in this little downtrend of lower highs and lower lows. Bulls have to change that momentum to break from the weekly consolidation. So I'd say ideal scenario for the bulls would be, if we are going to continue consolidating, hold support in the mid to low 150s and then turn around and break 170 to convincingly change that shift that momentum and give us that weekly higher low. Looking at ETH on the 4-hour time frame, never really set a higher low on this consolidation, although I guess you could say here we did, definitely. Rejected from the high and then dropped to the lower low. So clearly shifting that momentum, and now the question is daily consolidation underway for the cryptocurrency space? For Ethereum, it was the abnormal, or not the abnormal volume, but the oversold Climax. And the oversold and overbought Climax takes abnormal volume into part of its calculation, but it also factors in RSI and a couple other things. So here for ETH, this is the only name out of the big three that had the 4-hour exponential, or I should say the 4-hour extended oversold Climax trigger, and it ended up being a really nice alert. This is an alert, the 4-hour oversold, that in 2018, when we started to see some real weakness from that all-time high, this alert was absolute gold for a couple months, where it was just close your eyes and buy when that alert goes off, because we're going to see a significant bounce. And this reminds me of that. The amount of follow-through that we did see, we had that trigger down at 150, and then we saw a little higher low and moved all the way up to 159, and then just saw continuation of that move. And no other names saw that. So what that tells us is that ETH was the most beat up. which we knew. We could see that with the ETH BTC chart and the LTC BTC chart that we've been looking at in the past couple of videos. We knew Ethereum was the weakest out of these three that we've just looked at, and that's what led it to get to the extreme RSI levels. Bitcoin didn't even get close on the RSI to signaling these 4-hour climaxes. So this just tells me to pay more attention. I didn't act on this signal because I wasn't looking for it, but now this tells me keep an eye out for those 4-hour oversolds because they are still working in this environment. And if we see a scenario where Bitcoin were to drop down to that 4-hour oversold climax, I would be certainly interested in looking for that bounce to take place. And it's also the psychology of where we stand in the market at this point. After such a significant bull move, with so many people, timid and not sure if that's the low and are we going to drop down below 3,000, I think a lot of people are going to be ready to buy dips. And I think a lot of people are going to buy weekly consolidation, which again, we haven't seen on Bitcoin in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And once that weekly consolidation begins, I do believe there will be some dip buyers acting on that opportunity as a bit of a second chance if they missed the equilibrium bull break on the way up. XRP USD. So XRP USD has also been showing us it's much weaker. We did lose some support on the weekly time frame, and pretty much if we see a weekly lower high and lower low, that's going to be a very significant bearish development for XRP. It all depends on what this bounce looks like. We can say on the weekly time frame that anything under 38 cents is just a lower high being set, and if we see a very weak bounce attempt and then drop down to a lower low, that will be very significant. If we see a solid bounce, let's say we get up to 3-4, then we'll look for a weekly equilibrium to form. But as of right now, the bulls are on their heels a little bit, and we have the exponential resistance on the daily time frame still standing, and short-term support is 295. And if 295 breaks here, we lose the little daily uptrend, which means our weekly lower high may have already been set, which we hardly even saw any bounce take place. It would just be a further red flags on a name that already has red flags for bulls. Checking the 4-hour time frame, we can see we already lost the higher low pattern, similar to what we saw on Litecoin and other names. Bitcoin still holding on. Binance. So I'm doing my best to chart names that are not in Tether because Tether is still trying to even out from where we came on that dump, and we haven't gotten quite back to a 1-to-1 yet with the US dollar. So that affects what the charts look like. And you might be looking at Bitcoin on Bitfinex and you can see, wow, Bitcoin's over 6,000, but you look everywhere else in the space and that's not the case. So it is the effect of Tether's price that is leading to charts looking a little bit skewed as far as their levels go. But here looking at Binance in USDT on Binance, we are looking at the bulls needing to hold a higher low pattern compared to 21.27. Anything above that level keeps the bulls in complete control, as we haven't lost the daily uptrend on this consolidation. We know the weekly chart is multiple inside bars, and we're looking for this pattern to break next week. If it breaks bearish, we need a higher low to form compared to 1990, or actually 1625 is that low. So if it breaks bearish, we need the weekly higher low, and if it breaks bullish, all-time highs are very likely. So the daily time frame needs to see this higher low and higher high. Just keep this little uptrend up as we continue towards all-time highs. That's their goal. And you can see there's no red flags on this consolidation at this point. 4-hour time frame did drop to a lower low already. And we're looking for a daily higher low to form. Short-term resistance will be 4-hour lower high at 23.85 and then 24.13, which is the top of this move. Still definitely interested in Binance as long as that daily uptrend is intact. And even when we lose that, there's going to be a lot of people looking for entry on weekly consolidation. That last time we saw weekly consolidation, it was very brief. There's a lot of news catalysts that keep pushing us higher. And again, this is the kind of name where you look at this chart and you can say, all right, this one ran away from a lot of people very clearly who want positions in Binance. So we can anticipate that on weekly consolidation, we will probably see some buyers. ADA USD struggling to break resistance. We had a daily resistance level of 71 and we broke it, but only by a penny, and we double topped. That's not a convincing break. We're going to call that essentially a triple top at this point. We're looking for the weekly time frame to establish a higher low, and the fact that we could not even really convincingly break the daily lower highs tells us that that's not confident yet. We're not confident that we have established that higher low. We have to see 72 cents break convincingly with a bull volume spike for us to say that our weekly higher low is established, and then we would look to head back up into the 80s and 90s. So still patiently waiting and have to be cautious of that little fake out. And you can see with it being a penny stock here or a penny crypto that every 1 penny is a clear level a lot of the time. And that's one thing that I don't like about charting penny stocks and penny cryptos, where you can almost pick out a support and resistance level of previous price action for every penny. 70 cents, 71, 72. So it makes it a little bit more tricky on the shorter term time frames, but you look at it on the longer term, and it's just like any other chart. So I stick to the daily and weekly for clarity here. Again, it is worth watching for this weekly higher low to establish, considering we have pulled back about 35% from that high, and actually a little bit more than that. And just looking for the high volatility price action to lead to an equilibrium, but the bulls are going to have to get over 72 cents in order for that to begin forming. So that's where we stand overall. Bottom line is the Bitcoin bulls are still strong. We're still watching the 4-hour uptrend. If we lose it, we're just looking for daily higher lows to form. Bitcoin bulls have a lot of space to go with that daily higher low. Bitcoin's been holding up well comparative. Let's look at these charts real quick. Ethereum and Litecoin compared to Bitcoin. Here's ETH BTC. So tight daily range, which was a bear flag, dropping to lower lows very clearly. Looking at the weekly time frame, we were in an equilibrium that broke bearish, and we're now dropping down to the year low, 244 and 231. Very important supports approaching, and we also have consensus approaching for Ethereum as well. So if we're going to see any kind of bounce from these support levels, has to happen with that kind of momentum, or I should say that kind of fundamental incentive, fundamental catalyst. Daily RSI is oversold, and the weekly is getting pretty low. So if we see a flush here heading into consensus, ETH might be decent for a short-term bounce play, and it would be the ETH BTC chart that's looking for that bounce to take place. LTC BTC, also weak, but not nearly as weak. Daily time frame holding up in a tightening range, whereas Ethereum dropped clearly to a lower low. So the narrative continues. Bitcoin holding up the best, Ethereum is holding up the weakest, and Litecoin is in the middle there. But keeping an eye on the consensus as we approach to that conference because of how beat up that ETH BTC chart is. So we'll check back in as things continue to unfold. Again, play around with the alert system. Free week trial. Can't hurt to see what those are all about. And I'm going to focus in more now. If we do get daily consolidation on 4-hour overbought, oversold climaxes, I don't think Bitcoin's going to get to that point anytime soon, but certainly other coins may. And always wondering what that volume is doing. When we see volume spikes, when there's not a whole lot of action going on, that tells us get ready for volatility because something is brewing. Appreciate you watching. Do good things out there. We'll check back in probably tomorrow, but not going to hold myself to it. Have a good weekend. Finally reached a deal on a property, so as we head into late summer, into the fall, we'll start covering a new adventure of making a property into a permaculture homestead little environment with some animal friends eventually, but that probably won't be till next spring, but just getting infrastructure ready and building things up. Looking forward to sharing that with everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of your Saturday.